am so sorry for what I did. Please, please forgive me.
Welcome to Reality Folktales TV. This channel is built on real human emotions, real choices, and real consequences. Our stories are thoughtfully created with the help of AI, guided by human values, insight, and intention. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let's go.
I was cleaning toilets when my ex-husband became a billionaire. Then he showed up at my door begging. The knock on my door came at midnight, and when I opened it, the man who destroyed my life was standing there in a $1,000 suit with tears running down his face. 5 years ago, Vincent Hartley walked out on me while I was pregnant, choosing his career and his boss's daughter over the family we were supposed to build together. Now here he was, trembling on my doorstep in Los Angeles, begging for something I never thought I'd hear him ask for. But let me take you back to where it all started, because you need to understand how a love that felt like forever turned into the kind of betrayal that changes you at your core. I met Vincent when I was 23 years old, working double shifts at a diner in Chicago just to keep my head above water. He walked in one rainy October evening, soaked to the bone because his car had broken down 3 blocks away. I brought him coffee and a towel, and he looked at me like I'd just saved his life. We talked until my shift ended at 2 in the morning. He told me about his dreams of building something bigger than himself, about climbing out of poverty, about wanting to matter. I told him I understood because I wanted the same things. 6 months later, we were married at a small courthouse in New Jersey with 2 witnesses we pulled off the street. We didn't have money for a fancy wedding, but we had each other, and back then that felt like enough. Vincent was working in the mailroom at Titanium Dynamics, a massive tech company in Manhattan, and I was still slinging hash and pouring coffee, but we were happy. We'd stay up late in our tiny studio apartment, dreaming about the life we'd build together. He promised me that when he made it big, he'd never forget where he came from. He promised he'd never forget me. Hey, pause for just a second. I want to know, where are you watching this from right now, and what time is it where you are? Drop it in the comments because I love connecting with you all. And if this story is hitting you in the chest already, do me a favor. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for what happens next because this story goes places you won't believe. Vincent worked his way up slowly at first. Mailroom to assistant, assistant to junior analyst. He was brilliant with numbers, could see patterns where other people saw chaos. 3 years into our marriage, he got promoted to senior analyst, and suddenly we could afford a real 1-bedroom apartment in Queens. I was so proud of him I could burst. But that's when things started changing in ways I didn't recognize at first. He started working later hours, coming home at 9, then 10, then midnight. He'd say it was just the demands of the job, that this was what climbing the ladder looked like. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. I took on extra shifts at the diner so he wouldn't have to stress about money, so he could focus on his career. I thought we were building our future together. Then one night I decided to surprise him at the office with his favorite meal, because he'd been working until 2 in the morning for a week straight. I showed up at Titanium Dynamics at 11:30, carrying containers of hot food, excited to see his face light up. The security guard knew me by then and waved me through. I took the elevator to the 14th floor where Vincent's team worked. The floor was mostly empty, just a few lights on in the corner offices. I walked toward Vincent's cubicle and heard his voice coming from the conference room. He was laughing, the kind of deep, genuine laugh I hadn't heard from him in months. I smiled, thinking maybe he needed this surprise more than I realized. But when I got closer, I heard another voice, a woman's voice, soft and flirtatious. She said something I couldn't quite make out, and Vincent laughed again. My stomach dropped. I stood frozen in the hallway, the food containers getting heavy in my hands. I should have walked away. I should have trusted my husband. But something in my gut told me to look. I stepped to the doorway and peered through the glass panel. Vincent was sitting on the edge of the conference table, and standing between his legs was Melissa Hartwell, the CEO's daughter. She had her hands on his chest, and he was looking at her the way he used to look at me. They weren't kissing, but they might as well have been. The intimacy in that moment was so thick I felt like I was choking on it. I dropped the food containers. The crash echoed through the empty floor like a gunshot. Vincent's head snapped toward the door, and our eyes met through the glass. The guilt on his face told me everything I needed to know. He came running out, grabbing my arm as I tried to walk away. He swore nothing was happening, that Melissa was just being friendly, that I was overreacting. He said I was being paranoid and insecure. He made me feel crazy for what I'd seen with my own eyes. And because I loved him, because I'd built my entire adult life around this man, I let him convince me I was wrong. Things got better for a few weeks after that. Vincent came home earlier, brought me flowers, told me he loved me. I thought maybe the scare had reminded him what mattered. Then I found out I was pregnant. I took 3 tests to be sure, then waited for Vincent to come home from work. I bought a little pair of baby shoes and put them in a gift box. When he walked through the door that evening, I was practically vibrating with excitement. This was going to fix everything. This was going to bring us back to who we used to be. I handed him the box with tears in my eyes. He opened it slowly, staring at those tiny shoes for what felt like forever. Then he looked up at me, and the expression on his face wasn't joy. It was fear. It was resentment. It was trapped. He said, "Are you sure?" Those 3 words shattered something in me I didn't know could break. He didn't hug me. He didn't cry happy tears. He sat down on our couch and put his head in his hands and said, "This isn't a good time." I was 12 weeks pregnant when Vincent came home with papers, divorce papers. He set them on the kitchen table like they were a business proposal and told me he'd consulted with a lawyer. He said our marriage had run its course, that we wanted different things, that this was best for both of us. He said he'd make sure I was taken care of financially. I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, at this stranger wearing my husband's face. Then he said the words that killed whatever love I had left. "Melissa and I are together. It's serious. Her father is promoting me to VP of operations, but only if I clean up my personal life. I can't move forward with you holding me back." Holding him back. Those were his exact words. Me and the baby growing inside me were obstacles in his path to success. I signed the papers that night because I had too much pride to beg. He moved out the next morning, taking half our savings and most of my heart with him. 2 months later, I saw their engagement announcement in a business magazine. Vincent Hartley, newly appointed VP of Operations at Titanium Dynamics, engaged to Melissa Hartwell, daughter of CEO Richard Hartwell. I gave birth to our daughter alone. I named her Ruby because she was the most precious thing in my life, the only good thing that came from those years with Vincent. He sent child support payments through his lawyer but never asked to meet her, never called to check on us, never acknowledged that he had a daughter breathing and living in this world. I moved to Los Angeles for a fresh start when Ruby was 6 months old. I couldn't afford much, so I took a job cleaning offices at night while Ruby stayed with a neighbor. During the day, I slept in shifts and took online courses in business administration because I refused to stay stuck. I refused to let Vincent's betrayal define the rest of my life. The years crawled by like that. Me working overnight cleaning crews, studying during Ruby's naps, watching her grow into this beautiful, smart little girl who looked exactly like her father. Every time I saw Vincent's face in hers, it hurt, but I loved her too much to let that pain touch her. Then about 6 months ago, something changed. I saw a news headline that made my blood run cold. Titanium Dynamics CEO dies in plane crash. Richard Hartwell was dead. Melissa's father was gone. And according to the article, the company's board was in chaos trying to figure out succession. I wondered if Vincent was panicking, if his golden ticket had just expired. Part of me felt a dark satisfaction at the thought, but mostly I just felt nothing. He was part of a past I'd worked hard to bury. I kept cleaning offices, kept raising Ruby, kept building my little life brick by brick. I'd started my own small consulting business on the side, helping small companies organize their operations. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I was proud of what I'd built from nothing. Then came the knock on my door at midnight 3 weeks ago. I'd just put Ruby to bed and was reviewing a client proposal when I heard it. 3 soft knocks, hesitant and scared. I looked through the peephole and almost fell backward. Vincent stood there in an expensive suit, but he looked destroyed. His eyes were red and swollen. His hands were shaking. He looked like a man who'd lost everything. I opened the door because I needed to know what could possibly bring him to my doorstep after 5 years of silence. He opened his mouth and what came out was a broken whisper, "I need your help." I almost laughed, but the desperation on his face stopped me. "Melissa left me," he said, his voice cracking. "After her father died, she didn't need me anymore. She kicked me out of the company, out of our house, out of her life. I have nothing. The board voted me out because I was only there because of her. I lost everything." I stood there staring at this man who threw me away like trash, who abandoned his daughter, who built his empire on my broken heart. And now he was here asking for help because his world had collapsed. "Where have you been?" I asked quietly. "For 5 years, where have you been?" "I know I messed up," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I know I destroyed us, but I'm drowning here and you're the only person who ever really knew me. Please." I should have slammed the door in his face. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to shut him out the way he shut me out. But then I heard a small voice behind me. "Mommy, who's at the door?" Ruby, my baby girl standing in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Vincent looked past me and saw her. His daughter, 5 years old with his dark hair and his sharp chin and my eyes. He'd never met her, never held her, never sang her to sleep or wiped her tears or celebrated her birthday. His face crumpled completely. He dropped to his knees right there on my doorstep and sobbed like a child. Ruby looked at me confused. Why is that man crying? I could have lied, could have sent her back to bed and dealt with Vincent alone. But something in me decided that this moment needed to happen exactly as it was. "Ruby, honey, this is your father." The words hung in the air like smoke. Ruby tilted her head, processing this information with the brutal honesty of a 5-year-old. "The one who didn't want us?" she asked. My heart shattered into 1,000 new pieces. I'd never told her that exactly, but kids are smart. They piece things together from overheard conversations and careful questions, and the whole shaped silence where a parent should be. Vincent's sobs got louder. He looked up at Ruby and tried to speak, but no words came out. Just this awful choking sound of a man confronting the worst thing he'd ever done. I could have let him suffer there, could have let him drown in that moment, but I'm not built that way, so I did something I still can't fully explain. I invited him in. He sat on my couch, this broken shell of the man who once had everything, and told me the whole story. How Melissa had only wanted him to make her father happy. How after Richard died, she revealed she'd been having an affair with one of the board members for years. How she'd manipulated the board to vote Vincent out and install her lover as the new CEO. How she'd had lawyers strip him of everything. The house, the cars, the stock options, everything. He had nothing. No family, no job, no home. He'd burned every bridge on his way up, and now he was falling with no one to catch him. "Why come to me?" I asked. "What do you possibly think I can do?" He looked at me with something like awe. "Because you survived. I destroyed you and you survived. You built something from nothing. I need to learn how to do that. I need to learn how to be human again." I wanted to hate him, wanted to feel satisfaction at his downfall, but sitting there looking at him, all I felt was tired. Tired of carrying anger, tired of holding on to pain, tired of letting his ghost haunt my life. "I'll help you," I said slowly. "But not for you, for Ruby. Because whether you deserve it or not, she deserves to know her father. She deserves the chance to decide for herself what that relationship looks like." His eyes widened with desperate hope. "But you don't get to just show up and play dad when it's convenient," I continued. "You want to be in her life, you start from the bottom. You earn it. Every single day you earn it. And the second I think you're going to hurt her, you're gone. Understood?" He nodded so hard, I thought his neck might snap. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, Vincent has been coming over 3 times a week for supervised visits with Ruby. At first, she was shy and suspicious, keeping her distance, asking me every 5 minutes if she had to talk to him. But Vincent was patient in a way I'd never seen him be. He didn't push. He just sat on the floor and played with her toys, read her books when she let him, answered her questions honestly. "Why didn't you want me when I was a baby?" she asked him one day, so blunt it took my breath away. Vincent looked her right in the eyes and said, "Because I was scared and selfish and stupid. I thought being important was the same thing as being happy. I was wrong about everything that mattered. I'm sorry." Ruby thought about this for a long moment, then said, "Okay," and went back to coloring. Kids forgive easier than adults. It's both beautiful and terrifying. I helped Vincent get a job at a mid-level consulting firm. Nothing fancy, but honest work. He rented a small apartment in a neighborhood that would have horrified the old Vincent. He started going to therapy, started doing the work to understand why he'd made the choices he made. And slowly, carefully, something started shifting between us. Not romance. That ship had sailed and sunk and turned to rust at the bottom of the ocean. But something like friendship, something like understanding. We started having coffee together after his visits with Ruby. He'd tell me about his therapy sessions, about confronting the parts of himself he'd been running from his whole life, about how chasing status and money had been a way to prove to himself that he mattered, that he'd escaped the poverty he grew up in, about how losing everything had forced him to realize he'd gained nothing that actually mattered. I told him about the business I was building, about the clients I was helping, about the life I'd created from the ashes of what he'd burned down. I told him about the nights I'd cried myself to sleep wondering what was wrong with me, why I wasn't enough to make him stay, about learning that his leaving had nothing to do with my worth and everything to do with his emptiness. "You were always enough," he said one evening, staring into his coffee cup. "I was just too broken to see it." I didn't respond because there was nothing to say. Some truths come too late to change anything. But here's the thing about life. It doesn't care about what you think you deserve. It just keeps moving, keeps throwing curveballs, keeps testing whether you've actually learned anything. Last week, Vincent called me panicking. Melissa had filed a lawsuit against him, claiming he'd stolen proprietary information from Titanium Dynamics before he left. It was a lie, a vindictive move to crush him completely, but he didn't have money for lawyers. He was going to lose by default. I hung up the phone and stared at the wall for a long time. This was the man who'd abandoned me pregnant and alone. This was the man who'd chosen ambition over love. This was the man who'd missed 5 years of his daughter's life. I could have let him sink, could have said it was karma, that he'd made his bed and now he had to lie in it. But I thought about Ruby, about the way she'd started lighting up when she saw him, about how she'd drawn a picture of our family last week, me, her, and Vincent, all holding hands, about how she'd asked me if maybe someday Vincent could come to her school play. I thought about the lesson I wanted to teach my daughter. Did I want to teach her that people can't change, that mistakes are permanent, that forgiveness is weakness? Or did I want to teach her that people are complicated, that growth is possible, that choosing compassion doesn't make you a fool, it makes you free? I called Vincent back and told him I'd help. Not because I forgave everything. Some things leave scars that never fully fade. But because I'd learned something in those 5 hard years that he was only beginning to understand. Revenge doesn't heal you, and bitterness only hurts the person carrying it. I connected him with a lawyer friend who took the case pro bono. We gathered evidence proving Vincent hadn't taken anything from Titanium Dynamics. The lawsuit fell apart in 2 weeks, and Melissa's lawyers quietly withdrew it. Vincent came over the night it was dismissed. Ruby was already asleep. He stood in my living room and just looked at me for a long moment. "Why?" he finally asked. "After everything I did to you, why do you keep helping me?" I thought about how to answer that. Thought about all the complicated, tangled emotions I'd worked through in therapy, in late-night crying sessions, in quiet moments watching my daughter sleep. "Because you're Ruby's father," I said simply, "and because holding on to hate was killing me slowly. Helping you isn't about you deserving it. It's about me choosing peace." He nodded slowly, tears in his eyes again. This man who used to hide every emotion behind ambition and performance now cried at the drop of a hat. Trauma and loss had cracked him wide open. "I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself," he whispered. "That's between you and God," I said. "My job isn't to carry your guilt for you. My job is to raise our daughter to be better than both of us were." He left that night, and I sat in the quiet of my apartment thinking about the strange journey life takes us on. 5 years ago, I'd been at my lowest point, broken and alone, convinced I'd never be whole again. Now here I was, stronger than I'd ever been, building a life I was genuinely proud of, raising a daughter who was my whole world. Vincent's betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but it had also forced me to discover who I was when everything was stripped away. It had taught me that my worth wasn't tied to whether someone chose to stay. It had shown me that I was capable of surviving things I thought would kill me. And now, in some twisted full-circle moment, I was teaching those lessons to the man who'd forced me to learn them. Here's what I want you to understand, whoever's watching this. Betrayal feels like the end of the world when you're in it. It feels like you'll never breathe right again, like the pain will swallow you whole. And maybe for a while it does. Maybe you have to sit in that darkness and feel every terrible feeling until you're empty. But emptiness isn't the end. It's just space. Space for something new to grow. I'm not telling you to forgive people who hurt you. I'm not saying you should let toxic people back into your life. What I'm saying is that you get to choose what you carry. You get to decide if bitterness serves you or suffocates you. For me, letting go of the need for Vincent to suffer wasn't about him. It was about me refusing to let his mistakes keep defining my life. It was about choosing freedom over revenge. Some of you will think I'm weak for helping him. Some of you will say he doesn't deserve my kindness. You might be right. But I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for the woman I want to be. I'm doing it for the example I want to set for my daughter. Ruby is learning that people are complex, that mistakes don't have to be permanent sentences, that compassion is a choice you make every day. She's also learning that having boundaries doesn't make you cruel, that protecting yourself is necessary, that forgiveness doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. Vincent will never be my husband again. He'll never have my heart the way he once did. Too much has broken for that particular vase to be put back together. But he can be a father to Ruby. He can be someone who learns from his catastrophic mistakes and becomes better. And me, I'm building something beautiful from the ruins he left behind. My consulting business is growing. I'm looking at buying a small house next year, something Ruby and I can actually call ours. I'm dadding again, carefully and slowly, learning to trust in small increments. I wake up every morning next to my daughter and I'm genuinely happy, not pretend happy, not making the best of it happy, actually truly happy. The man who threw me away thinking I was worthless didn't destroy me. He freed me to discover what I was actually worth. And that's the lesson I want to leave you with. The people who abandon you aren't always the villains in your story. Sometimes they're the catalyst that forces you to become the hero. Vincent lost everything chasing status and ended up with nothing. I lost everything being thrown away, and ended up with everything that actually mattered. I'm not grateful for the pain. I'm not grateful for the betrayal, but I'm grateful for who I became in the aftermath. I'm grateful for the strength I didn't know I had. I'm grateful for my daughter who wouldn't exist without those painful years. Life is strange and complicated and rarely fair, but it keeps going whether you're ready or not. You can choose to grow or you can choose to stay bitter. Both are understandable. Only one sets you free. I chose freedom. Every single day I keep choosing it. Ruby asked me last night if Vincent could come to her birthday party next month. She wanted to know if it would make me sad. I told her the truth. It would probably be a little uncomfortable, a little weird, but that her happiness mattered more than my discomfort. She hugged me tight and said, "You're the best mommy in the whole world." And in that moment, sitting there with my baby girl in my arms, in the life I'd built from scratch with bleeding hands and a broken heart, I realized something profound. Vincent didn't take anything from me that I didn't eventually get back better. He took my trust and I learned to trust myself. He took my innocence and I gained wisdom. He took my dependence and I found independence. He took my marriage and I discovered I didn't need a man to complete me. The woman I am now would terrify the broken girl crying over divorce papers 5 years ago, but she'd also make that girl so proud. So to everyone watching this who's been betrayed, abandoned, left behind, your story isn't over. The person who walked away doesn't get to write your ending. You do. And you get to decide if that ending is about revenge or redemption, bitterness or growth, staying stuck or becoming free. I chose to become free. It was the hardest and best decision I ever made. Vincent will always be the man who abandoned me when I needed him most. That truth doesn't change. But he's also becoming the man who's trying desperately to be better, and I'm allowing him the space to try, not for him, but for my daughter and for my own peace. Some stories don't end with the revenge you hoped for. Sometimes the person who hurt you doesn't get what you think they deserve. Sometimes they show up broken and begging, and you have to decide who you want to be in that moment. I decided I wanted to be someone my daughter could be proud of, someone who knew her worth without needing to prove it by making others suffer, someone who understood that compassion isn't weakness, it's the hardest kind of strength. That's my story. That's my truth. And if even one person watching this realizes they have the power to write their own ending no matter how painful the beginning was, then sharing this was worth it. You are not what was done to you. You are what you choose to become in spite of it. Before you go, I need you to do something for me. If this story touched you, if it made you feel something real, hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel because I share stories like this to remind us all that we're more resilient than we know. Drop a comment telling me what part of this story hit you hardest. I read every single one, and your words matter to me. Let's build a community of people who refuse to let their pain define them. Let's remind each other that we're survivors, we're fighters, and we're worth more than anyone who walked away will ever understand. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Now go out there and write your own ending.
Thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. May your day be blessed